So let me start out by saying that I really don't want to be here. I really don't want to be talking to you, and I really am having a hard time with the things that I'm going to talk to you about. The person in front of you is a very composed person, but the inner person, the voice in my head, is telling me right now to stop. I have a little shake going on. I've talked dozens of times, but I don't talk about this. This is private. But I'm doing this for a reason. And the reason is last year, Jay Radcliffe and I did a talk here at BSidesLV over in the underground. And it was about mental health. And that talk was sort of a pro and con type approach. Jay is somebody who is very open about his mental health issues and about the help that he gets with his mental health issues. And I was kind of on the opposite side of that. I said, look, I may have problems. Everybody has problems. But I don't need to do what you're doing. I don't need any of that. And I had to really explore why that was for us to give the talk. And I said, look, let's do it in the underground. That way, it's not on video. We don't have to worry about it. It's just between us and the audience. We got an amazing response from the audience. I was stopped in the halls here. I was stopped in the halls at DEF CON. I had people approach me at breakfast when I was out, all about this talk that we did. And from my perspective, I wasn't even doing anything. Jay was doing all the talking. And we had a little discussion about it, and we said, the worst part about doing it in the underground is supposed to be quiet. We don't talk about things in the underground except what's in that room. And if you're going to talk about mental health and you're going to make an impact, you need to do it out in the open. I don't want this recorded, but I didn't tell them not to record it. I'm doing this because we need to start talking about things in the open so people can understand that the things they go through aren't just what they go through, that we go through this together. So the big things that hold me back, are pride, paranoia, fear, and shame when it comes to talking about mental health. Pride, because for years, I've done this on my own. For years, I've been able to get by. For years, I've been my therapist, for lack of a better word. So why would I need somebody else to help me, right? Paranoia. What if I tell this person something and it gets out? What if they take secret notes on me that the government then subpoenas? I'm going to tell you a story about that in a little bit. Fear. What if I actually find out something I'm not ready to deal with? Right? And shame. Everybody knows shame. Right? I'm ashamed that I have these struggles. I think everybody feels this way, but nobody says it. Nobody says it out loud. And that's a really weird thing. So something interesting happened about a month ago. There's a company that's called Olark. I don't know what they do, and it doesn't matter what they do. But what happened was they had a tweet by one of their employees that went viral. Not only did it go viral on Twitter, it started getting picked up in all the major news media. It got picked up by Reuters. It got picked up by CNN. And it started like this. One by the name of Madeline Parker sent a note to her internal list of out of the office. And she said, hey, everybody, I'm really having some struggles. I'm going to take some mental health days so I can focus on my mental health and be better when I come back, right? A simple gesture. But here's the amazing thing that happened. The CEO of the company responded and said, hey, Madeline, I really want to personally thank you for sending an email. Everybody needs to focus on their mental health, and the importance of using sick days for mental health should be something we just assume is okay. And for some reason, this went viral. People picked this up. It went crazy. And if you look at the tweet that she made, she went to the CEO and she said, hey, is it okay if I tweet this and make it publicly known? And he said, yeah, absolutely, go ahead. And if you see the responses people had, they had crazy responses like, my HR person told me that mental health isn't a real condition and that I would need a doctor's note to take sick time for this. These are typical things we're dealing with. So Ben Congleton, who is the CEO who responded, wrote a Medium post. And in that post, he said a number of really interesting things. The first thing he said was, it's 2017 and we're in a knowledge economy. If we're in a knowledge economy and we are relying on our brains to do the jobs that our tools will pick up, why aren't we focusing on what makes that knowledge good and better? He said, our jobs require us to execute at peak mental performance, which is true. I don't care what you do. In our industry, you have to be at peak mental performance. Whether you're red teaming, whether you're blue teaming, whether you're purple teaming, whether you're using every enterprise tool available to you, whether it's best of breed or open source, You have to be at peak mental performance to be able to function. He said, when an athlete is injured, they sit on the bench and they recover. Sure, right? We are much like athletes. Maybe we're not physically using our bodies, but we're exercising our mental muscles. And when those muscles get damaged, they have to sit and they have to recover. And he said, let's get rid of the idea that somehow the brain is different. Absolutely agree. The brain is no different than the body. It's part of the body. And our mental health state and our physical health state, and there's been research to support this, are actually connected. So you can manifest physical sickness because of mental state, and vice versa. How about this? Josh Corman talked about this today, imposter syndrome, in his keynote, and it was fantastic. Imposter syndrome is something that lives in our community all the time. I see it all the time. I myself have been a victim of it. And Josh had a great point. He said, look, if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, you are not only doing yourself a disservice, you're damaging the community, you're damaging the industry. Because if you can't bring forth your contributions and consider them valid contributions, then we as a community cannot get better. We can't progress. I absolutely agree with this. So maybe you're somebody who sits with imposter syndrome. I will tell you this, I still have it. After 25 years of doing IT and security, and I go to clients and I work with them, they ask me questions. Sometimes I'm not sure if I know the answer, right? That's imposter syndrome. How I deal with it is what really matters. So then I started looking around and I said, how are people feeling? And I found this really interesting post on the Mighty. And what they did is they asked people, how do you feel about depression? What are the things about depression that you would not talk about? And they made this list of these quotes from these people. So I pulled a few out because I thought that they were really relevant to what I was thinking. Mentally exhausted from having to apologize for who you are. See this all the time, right? We go through these traumas, we go through these trials, and you're just saying, I'm sorry, I'm so messed up, I'm sorry. My wife has heard this a million times from me. She has, right? My wife is in this room, for those of you who don't know, and I'm having a hard time with that. Wanting to say what's on your mind, and you can't explain it, so you cry. Now, I don't cry, I'm not a crier, I never have been. Maybe that's part of the problem, right? Maybe I need to get that out, but it's just not. But the first part of that, absolutely. You want to say what's on your mind, you can't explain it. Another way I heard somebody say it was, you want everybody to shut up, but nobody's talking. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. When I'm having an episode, but I'm not so far gone, and part of my rational brain is still present telling me, you don't need to feel that way, and the dark part of the mind won't release its grip. This one I absolutely align with. I'm reading a book right now by Dan Harris called 10% Happier, and he talks about this. He talks about that inner voice. And he's like, that inner voice isn't like voices in your head, it's that inner narrator. He goes, and it fixates on the past and it fixates on the future to the detriment of the present. And that's absolutely true, right? That inner narrator that we can't shut up that's telling us what we're doing is wrong. It's happening to me right now, okay? Not feeling like you can explain it because there's not a tangible reason for it. Sometimes there's not a reason for stuff, and that's okay. And in order to accept mental state and mental health, we have to accept the fact that sometimes there's just no explainable reason, right? I would posit this is why we have a problem with anti-vaxxers right now. And I say that in a sympathetic way. People are searching for a reason for their children that have come down with autism or been born with autism, right? And vaccinations is an easy way to fixate on it. So they're looking for a reason, but maybe there isn't a reason, at least not a reason we've discovered, right? Mental health, it's the same way. Mental health and physical health. It all comes down to this. Mental health is health, okay? If we say mental health, we're singling it out. We're making it a thing on its own, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's health. And if you accept this premise that mental health is health, then why in the world would you ever diagnose your own disease? Why in the world, if you had something like cancer, would you diagnose it yourself? The answer is you wouldn't. You're going to go seek a professional, maybe several professionals, to help you figure out what's going on, what's going to be your treatment plan, what's your long-term prognosis, right? These are all things you're going to do. Why would it be any different with mental health? I don't know the answer to this, But it raises the questions that I go, yeah, I got to figure this out. So remember, I told you, Jay and I were talking, and Jay was talking about his therapy and the success he was having with it. And I was saying why I wouldn't do it. Not that I didn't recognize I didn't need it, right? The rational part of my brain is saying this is something you should be doing. But that dark part was just going, no, deal with your paranoia, your fear, your pride, and your shame. It's fine, right? And that's the way you live your life. And that's the way you go on being forever. So in order to change that story, I had to take a step. And that's what this is all about. The second part of what I want to talk to you about is the step. And I have some videos for you because I figured the best way for me to tell you about this was to have me tell you about it in the moment I was having those kinds of feelings. So as you can see, I'm driving in my car. I've just done a major thing. It's June 15th, which is my second son's birthday. It's 8:45 a.m. I just called Blue Cross and asked them for a list of therapists. I talked to somebody named Chad on the phone, and he was very helpful. And he's going to send me a list of providers in my area to do this. This has been a very difficult road. Even talking about this openly to anybody, even to myself, has been very, very difficult. And even a customer service person on the other end of my healthcare provider was extremely difficult for me to articulate that I needed to see a therapist. But I've done this, and if I can do it, so can you. So here's the interesting thing. Well, since the last time I talked to you, Yep, we'll get to that in a minute. So the interesting thing is that last line where I said, if I've done this, so can you, that wasn't a message for you. That was a message for me. That was past me talking to future me, okay? And it's significant. It's very significant, and I want you to understand that it took me almost a year after talking about fear, paranoia, pride, and shame, and not dealing with it, for me to make a call while I was driving in my car somewhere, right? While I'm at my weakest, and basically said, if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna do it, and just do it, okay? So I made this call, right? So here's some successive things after that. Well, since the last time I talked to you, I have an appointment now in 2 days. Today is July 2nd. No, July 3rd, so my appointment is July 5th. So 3 weeks. And I'm really not looking forward to it whatsoever. I'm running all of the different scenarios through my head of what could be said, of what will be said, what direction we might go in, what I want to say, what I don't want to say. But here's the real issue. The real issue I'm having is this is literally my first time. If I don't like this person, I won't go back. That's the biggest problem. In order for this to work, sometimes it's not going to work, and you have to keep going back. The rational part of me understands this. The irrational part of me just shuts down and says, nope, it's not working, forget it. That's a really important thing to remember. It's a really important thing to focus on. And if I don't click with this person as a therapist, then I have to find somebody else. It's been really hard to find anybody at all. So this is a difficult journey. There you go. How do you handle difficult journeys? You persevere, or you give up. There's really no other choice. See what happens. So there you go. And it was really hard. I called 10 different clinics to say, are you accepting new patients? Are you seeing people? Nope, 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 nope. 5 of those were referrals from people that I trust, right? Couldn't get in. So I kind of settled for whoever would take me first. At least in my mind, that's how I feel, right? I settled. Fine, I'll do it. This is the first time, I'm just going to do it. So I made the appointment. 3 a.m. the night before. I just can't sleep. It's bothering me that much. I just can't get to sleep. I need to go lay down, even if I just lay there, even if I can't sleep. But it's really, really bugging me. So interesting thing about that, I woke up this morning at 3 a.m. and I couldn't sleep because I was like, wow, I got to give this talk today, right? See a pattern here, right? But that was me, and I wanted to capture it because that's just how it is. So I'm here, and I am unhappy. The entire drive up here. Don't laugh at my pain. Just the things that were going through me. At one point, I was actually shaking, like with rage. I really, really don't want to do this, but I'm doing it. Oh, okay. So that's important to understand. It was about a 25-minute drive to the person I was going to go see, and I was literally like this, right? I almost had tears. I told you I'm not a crier. I almost had tears. I was just like, and it wasn't fear. It was anger. I was feeling anger, rage at doing this, right? Again, pride. Pride is holding me back. It's causing these feelings to happen. Why are you doing this? You don't need this. This is what's going through my head. Then I took another video very shortly thereafter in the waiting room. My heart is racing. My head is pounding. I'm in a real state. The reason the camera's doing that is I've got the phone on my leg and I'm just bouncing my leg, right? Bouncing my leg because I am in a state. And guess what? Right now, my heart is racing and my head is pounding and I'm in a state, right? I get to walk around, which is good. I can burn some of that up. So I had the appointment number 1. This was 3 weeks ago, okay? My first appointment. This is the video from that. Okay, I just left. My first impressions of the experience. Let me talk about the experience first. The experience was a good experience. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was great. I wouldn't say it was bad. I would say it was, fairly average. A lot of it was me having to set the stage. So giving all the details of my life and things like that. And the comment that the therapist made at the end is he said, next time I want to talk more about these issues that are actually impacting you and causing you to feel these feelings of depression and anxiety. And I said, yeah, I understand. I said, I'm just trying to set the stage. And he goes, no, that's great. It's fantastic that we have the background. And I told him, I said, really, there's more to set, as we start to get through this and tease out all of the things that are. So this first session really was about me giving background information. He didn't ask me very many questions. He asked me, do you have good memories of childhood? Which I think is a typical question that therapists ask, and stuff like that. But it was a little bit different than I thought it would be, and it was a lot of me kind of, giving some backstory, which I'm good at. So that was okay, right? And setting that stage, and there'll probably be more of that. So what we have set up now is 2 more appointments before I see you in Las Vegas. And what I'm going to do is just give you the recap after those appointments and see where we go from there. Unless I have something that really freaks me out between then and now, I'll let you know. But so far, so good. So, work myself into a frenzy. And that's what I came out with after working myself into a frenzy. Okay? Did I click? I don't know. Right? At that point, I have no idea. I don't know what's going on at that point. So the next 2 are just going to be the follow-ups after the appointments, so you can see what was going through my head. And the reason I'm doing this is I want you to see my process and what I'm going through, because I want you to be able to take a step. And I want you to see what it looks like, at least from some person's perspective. So I want to get out some of these thoughts while they're still in my head. The first thing that strikes me is the hour went by really fast. I'm really surprised at how quickly that hour went by. And again, this was mostly me talking. The therapist talked a little bit, but it was mostly me just talking. And I thought I was being fairly stream of consciousness, that there wasn't a lot of continuity between the things I was saying. And I did notice that he was taking notes. He actually took a lot of notes, several pages of notes, which I need to ask him about next time. But it really was interesting to me that the time went by so fast because, I wasn't telling stories, really. There wasn't a beginning, a middle, and an end. It was just a lot of me just doing like data dumps. I was just doing data dumps, chunks. Here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. These things don't necessarily relate. These things do relate. I talked about my personal life. I talked about my marriage. I talked about my kids. I talked about a little bit about my work life and my amazing work colleagues. So, again, it was just data dumps. It was just little pieces of things here and there that I could get out that seemed like it would be useful information. That's kind of the way I approached it, was, again, in trying to give all the backstory necessary to draw out the details. I was doing, I guess this was the exposition round. It was interesting. Appointment number 2. What's going to happen? I don't know. Honestly, I have no feeling one way or the other today as to what actually is going to go down. And I guess that's good, because if you remember the last time, I was feeling a whole lot of things. So now I'm pretty neutral on the whole thing. Let's see what happens. All right. So I feel a little bit better, I guess. Again, still kind of neutral. And in this session, though, he asked me a question. He said, "What does it look like here when we're done?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea." And it made me question, like, why am I here in the first place? What's my end goal? What I finally decided on is that I need to understand the drivers for why I'm using food as my crutch, as my vice. And very likely it has to do with things that I've repressed from my childhood, which is odd in one sense, but it makes sense in another sense. Maybe. We'll see. But anyway, that's what I discovered. So these first 2 sessions, what I would say is there were no breakthroughs, and maybe I sort of expected that, because when you watch TV, you see people and their breakthroughs. We haven't done any of that yet. I wasn't really emotionally moved. There was a little bit that came up, but not a lot. So in some sense, I think that this journey, again, it's just started with a couple of steps, and it's a discovery journey, and I'm not going to discover things right away, but it's going to come. So yeah, what I'll say is I'm satisfied with this process at this point. I have one more meeting until Vegas, so I will see you then. We'll see what happens, and I can give you my thoughts. And the last one. So today we talked about antecedent behavior. We talked about cycles of addiction and how to break cycles, and using tools like meditation, which is something that I've always been interested in. And we talked a little bit about my cognizance of cycles and just the inability in trying to break them, right? So these are the things that we're going to work on. And I have some homework because I'll be with you in Vegas next week. And then after that, we'll see where it goes. But after 3 appointments, what I can tell you is I think we're walking down the right path. And I wouldn't have thought that this would happen after 3. So I'm kind of impressed that we've gotten to talk about the things that we're talking about. But there you have it. That's my impression after 3. I'll be talking to you soon. And I hope that you can learn from this experience. And I hope that it empowers you to do better by you. All right, thank you, past me. So that's what it comes down to. When we talk about mental health, when we talk about health, would you expect after suffering something to your health to go to 3 doctor's appointments and be just fine. It really depends on the degree to which you're suffering. I've been suffering for 48 years, okay? Now, I want to say something very, very specific. I am not diagnosed with anything. I have not been diagnosed with depression. I have not been diagnosed with anxiety. I feel the symptoms of depression and anxiety a lot, but I'm going to wait for a diagnosis to actually treat that if that's what it is, because it could very well be something else. And that's what this process is all about. So I hope that you can learn from that. I hope that you can see what I've done. I hope it inspires you to do better by you, to be better, and to make your health a #1 priority. Thank you very much.